All right, welcome everybody. Jim, what is this, week 100? I'm lost track.
Not quite, but we're getting there.
Okay. All right, so let me bring up the agenda for today, and we'll get right on into it. All right. So we, Chip, I believe Liran had a question. Was it a question or two? If my memory serves me correct, is that fair?
Yeah, we've got a couple of things to talk about. Liran actually wanted to chat with the group with some questions. I'll let him get into that. I think he has a couple of small product updates to offer. For those partners who are API aficionados of our stuff, I think 2 weeks ago we announced that we were about to release 3 new APIs. We have now done that. They are in production and ready to rock and roll. So anybody that is ingesting data from us or even manipulating tenants via API, there's been some significant updates there. So reach out through support if you want access to those, and we'll get everybody teamed up. But yeah, let's turn it over to Liran for a little bit. Make him the star.
All right, thank you. So a couple of topics I wanted to cover. One of them is a question regarding some new fun SMS regulations that we are contending with. And the second topic is something that I think as technologists, you all have touched or experimented with, and that is AI and how to incorporate AI into our product as something that we've started thinking about. So let's get the first topic out of the way. And so I'll share my screen. Let me know when you guys can see my screen.
Sure. We got you.
All right. So basically, new SMS regulation that we have to contend with in order to remain compliant involves having people opt in whenever we send an SMS message. And the challenge for us is that we're not a simple send me a text message sort of application, because you may enroll your text here when you create a respond rule. Right. So this is, I'm in a random respond rule in the SMS alerts, and I've just put my number in here 3 times to illustrate the idea, but this could be tech 1, tech 2, and tech 3 that I am enrolling. So I think the first question I want to ask you guys is, we are making the assumption that when you create a respond rule, you are not only enrolling yourselves, but enrolling other folks in your MSP. So I'd love to get your thoughts and input onto whether or not that is in fact true.
Just some thumbs up or down in the chat would help with that, guys.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to just jump in and give their perspective on it, much appreciated.
And also customers, we're also curious to see if anyone is enrolling, any customers for SMS messaging.
And it's okay, it's okay if it's a no. Just you have not.
I was going to jump in and say that I use it mostly for testing to see how often an alert would trigger. But most of the stuff that we've set up is ticket based, but it is great for testing, so I know when an alert would have triggered, see how loud something would be.
Ben, is your concern the noise? Is that why you don't do it? Just like turn it on? Or is it something else?
Not really. We try to funnel everything through the ticketing system. And we have a couple guys that will watch that over like after hours to look for emergency tickets, and will let us know about it through Teams or other methods. I guess we've tried to have kind of a work-life balance. So unless you're on call, you're typically, not really checking that board unless you're one of our. We have a couple of guys in the Philippines that kind of monitor our stuff after hours.
Got it. So Liran, I don't know if you're watching chat, but Ryan Thompson actually nailed exactly one of the use cases that we anticipate. adding one contact per client to receive SMS on presumably specific respond events that occur.
Okay. And Ryan, that one contact that you plan to add per client, I assume it may very well be someone else's mobile other than your own, right?
Correct. So what we plan on doing is having the essentially security liaison, or whoever's going to be accountable to security on behalf of that client. We would enroll them in those SMS alerts on top of email alerts and tickets alerts, so that they have an out-of-band communication channel essentially for any automatic respond rules. That's what we plan on implementing.
Nice.
Cool. So I think answers that. Go ahead.
Can you see adoption of it today, Liran, just in general? Is it, when, can you on the margin, on the aggregate?
Oh yeah. I mean, just the numbers speak for themselves, Andrew. We're sending hundreds of SMS messages a day, excluding our own testing, which would jump that up close to into the thousands. So yeah, we definitely see adoption of it.
Okay.
Which is why this topic is coming up. The industry is adopting super strict regulations on SMS to try and cut down on SMS spam. So we're going to have to make a bunch of changes, which I think Liran is about to go through, that are going to impact how this is utilized.
Got it.
Right. And so it's important for us to understand how you guys are using the SMS feature, because what basically needs to happen is we need a visual confirmation in order to, and the reason that we're doing all this is some partners are coming to us and they're saying, hey, I'm not getting the respond SMSs. So after we've dug into it and we've looked into it, turns out that there's a whole bunch of new regulations that we need to start contending with, and opting in on a per phone number basis is very much one of those things. So one of the things that we are experimenting and designing this, so understanding how you guys are using this is number one, the most important thing. And then two, we'll add like an opt-in button or a checkbox that says, I authorize adding these phone numbers that come in. And as part of that regulatory compliance process, anybody that receives an SMS from us will also have the ability to say stop or opt out of receiving those SMSs on an ongoing basis.
Not that I'm an expert in this by any means, but is this Chip, by any chance, with the new FTC regulations that are coming?
This is one of those situations like the payment card industry. Remember way back when they tried to get out in front of the FTC because they didn't want the FTC telling them what to do.
Right.
This is sort of the same thing. So the carriers have banded together and said, all right, we're going to crack down on this and make anyone who is using SMS for commercial purposes, register their phone numbers, B, jump through a bunch of hoops to prove their identity for those registered numbers that they're sending from, C, follow a strict pattern of opt-in and opt-out. You guys have probably all seen this for things like your banks or other stuff where, they're telling you, hey, you subscribe to receive mobile alerts from Wells Fargo, press no to opt out or press yes to accept, or that sort of thing. So we're going to have to incorporate all of that, but it also means that we're going to have to make some visual changes in the user interface itself to inform people right away that, by taking this action, they are subscribing, which we all take for granted, right? This is an application that's behind a login. It's not like someone can just browse by and stick a random phone number in it. Nevertheless, we still have to comply with these new regulations that the carriers are imposing. And this is why we have some partners, and when we say some, it's a really small percentage, but we get, we've gotten maybe a half dozen tickets since we released this feature, respond, from partners saying, I'm not getting SMS messages. And digging into it, what we find out is that some carriers are just basically randomly dropping the SMS messages that are coming from SaaS Alerts via our SMS provider. And they're doing it because we're not being reported to have complied with this whole new set of regulations that goes into ironclad effect in July of this year. So we're getting out ahead of it so that people don't lose messages.
you bring it, but where my brain just went, Jim, is for our MSPs on this call having business conversations with their customers. Meaning, okay, we're seeing how this affects a vendor like SaaS Alerts, like yourself. Do any of your customers use SMS messaging? Do you have any medical clinics that might ask their customers? Like, I don't know about you guys, but like I have a PT appointment, right? I know they're not some big conglomerate owned by a, big healthcare provider, but they may be serviced by an MSP.
Totally.
And so this is how to have kind of like that challenger sale moment, Jim, where we see a change, a trend, a change in the industry. And as MSPs, how are you using this to stir up a conversation, right? About one, where the business is headed, where the puck's going, right? Two, maybe what implications it could have on their business. And again, change your relationship with that customer or prospect. What are your thoughts on that, Jim? And I'd love anybody's opinion. Or do you have any clients like this?
Look, I totally agree. From the small, my dentist, uses text like almost exclusively, along with, like you said, PT, but then, CVS, like prescription, you know what I mean? Like they're huge. They're all using SMS, right? So 100%. I mean, there's so many folks out there relying on this technology. So I think it's really important that people do have that conversation. And it is a fantastic opportunity to start talking about, industry insights.
Well, again, like why is hypothetically, if it's the FTC, let's just role play here. And by the way, please, anybody in chat, can you tell me, does one of your customers utilize SMS? And if you don't, if you don't, again, please don't take this as a shot at everybody, because this is our industry, not knowing our customers, right? We know their technology, but we don't know how they do business. On the margin, that is our industry. Fair, Jim?
Yeah. Look, I would gather to assume at least that if you have a business continuity plan, one of the ways that communication will happen if your computer systems are down is SMS.
Right. Look, the reason I know this is because in talking to the IR teams, and I have a lot of them that I know, and MSPs involved, high 90% of the time when the DFIR team comes in and goes, okay, let's talk about their business processes and data flow. And, do you have a DFD? Do you know their critical apps? Do you know this, and this? High 90% of the time, the MSP can't answer it. So again, I'm not coming here to slam anybody. I'm saying, please, let's change our value proposition in the customer, right? Why are they doing this? Well, as Chip said, right? Because, if there's a URL in there, we know smishing, right, Chip, is a perfect way to compromise an environment, right? Which is probably behind a lot of these decisions. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you bring up smishing. This morning, working with one of our team members, one-on-one with a big project that we've got going on, she turns to me and said, "Hey, I just got a text from Jim, and it says that he's in a meeting and he needs me urgently to respond to this text so he can give me some instructions for a special project." And I just looked at her and said, does that really sound like Jim? And she was like, no, absolutely not. So, that kind of stuff is going on. That SMS phishing or smishing is a real problem. We've seen it multiple times in our little organization already. And it's pretty well targeted between the fake identity of the requester and the real identity of the recipient, that it wouldn't be uncommon, let me put it that way, to have that kind of communication. Like I get them almost every week, you know, that my Netflix account is about to be canceled. Well, I don't have Netflix, so I just crack up with those. And, you know, I used to be motivated to click on them and respond and start playing games with them, but I don't even do that anymore because that's just another way of confirming your phone number. So yeah, it's a real problem, and the whole industry is definitely trying to crack down on it.
Yeah, and a great way, in my opinion, a great way, if you haven't sold security awareness training, if you haven't sold phishing simulation, if you haven't sold for the noise, if you haven't sold SaaS alerts into the client, use it as a commercial insight.
Yeah, it's a good starter. So Liran, we're getting a little far afield for you. Do you have, were you going to get into mock-ups of how we're changing this, or just want to review the lay of the land?
Yeah, I just wanted to review the lay of the land and just validate this key assumption that, right, in most applications, you only self-enroll, but in this application, you're enrolling potentially yourself, techs, other phone numbers, service numbers, things like that. So we just wanted to validate what that assumption looks like, and to continue to build out our user experience from that point on.
Okay, I think we bottomed that out for now.
All right. So next up, or do we have more? Another thing.
Next topic is I hope that all of you guys have had the chance to, I'm sure you've read about it, seen it in the news, have heard about it just about everywhere, but artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and Bard and all these various other things. And one of the things that we're starting to think about here is, how is this going to affect us? And while we have a bunch of notes, we have a bunch of ideas around this topic, I didn't want to color anybody's bias towards this by sharing some of our ideas, but rather wanted to throw out an open question into how you see, how could we incorporate artificial intelligence into this product in order to help you do your jobs? So kind of an open question, see what you guys think about this topic.
Love it, that Mike and Ben. It's so funny.
Yeah, Ben's is a good one.
Good time sheets.
Yeah, if anybody have any thoughts, and I can start the conversation, Liran, if you want, as more as where I see the industry, like, again, early adopters. This is both the vendors as well as the MSPs. I've already seen the technology that's coming in terms of, for example, for MSPs, that's going to start coming out, and that is going to be around service tickets. Let's say you have 7 tier 1 people on doing help desk tickets, you're going to only need 3.5. And now I'm not saying that because you should go fire 3.5. I'm saying that because ticketing is something that is repetitive, and the first 20 minutes of it and 15 minutes of it is typically research. And when you can ingest 20 years of ConnectWise Manage or auto task tickets, and then ingest every single piece of documentation of firewalls, servers, etc., you get some pretty good answers pretty fast. And they can be responded to customers. So back to your question, Liran, I think just in general documentation's sake, hey, how do I do this? Or, hey, I got this alert in SaaS Alerts. What does it mean? Or, you know, should I respond to this? Or should I contact, you know, there's all those types of things that your customer success and service team probably is doing today, or there's probably some repetitive things there. Is that fair?
Yeah, and in fact, what I was thinking is, if I get an alert, we have a button in there somewhere that says, what do I do about this, right? And when you click on that, it pre-populates a question to the AI and says, I just received this alert, what do I do? And because it's all interconnected, right, we can now provide the additional context and not only give you the singular alert, but give you that person's history so you could look at it, ask the question, and so the AI could then say, well, given the history and what I'm looking at and this particular alert, this is what I recommend doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, this is a huge competitive advantage. This is the one of the first times I will say, Jim and Chip, and you know, Liran, and everybody on here, I'm gonna go out on a limb that you talk crossing the chasm, the early adopters, you're gonna have a huge competitive advantage. Do not wait on this one for leveraging this kind of stuff in your MSP. You're behind.
Guys, do we talk or do we write? Sorry.
Both. Whatever you'd like.
Okay, well, I just implemented Monday, I believe, ChatGPT on a SOC system. They told me to give it 2 weeks to learn. Learn what? I don't know, but we're gonna give it 2 weeks. The brand new SOC system, so we don't really know it, and we put the ChatGPT in there. You go to open tickets about alerts, and it gives you kind of a summary as to what GPT thinks about it. Right now, hasn't told me much, but I don't know if it expects for me to be tagging and making changes to learn from me, or if it's going to be learning automatically, but I'll find out here soon.
I can give you some insight in that because of my years working with Perch, Enrique, because they were using it way back in the day before Aaron Chernin and team sold it. And what you start to find is things like false positives. So when it's looking at the metadata of a PCAP or something, packet capture or any type of thing, and Ben, please feel to chime in on this. These are the areas where you can get mass efficiencies on SOC teams that, would sit there and be looking at, alert after alert after alert after alert after alert. This thing can clear out just immense amounts of data in a SOC. So
Does it have to learn from me by what I'm doing to the tickets?
I think it depends on, I think it will certainly, but it also depends on, what information you're feeding, quote unquote, it. Like, are you feeding it common false positives? Hey, here's common false positives we're seeing. Give me a common false positive library seen in the SOC.
Okay.
Those types of things. Ben, any thoughts on this? And just curious, or anybody else using it?
Tons. I use it all day. We actually purchased the paid version for our company, and I've actually purchased it for myself. My wife uses it. We share an account. She uses it for things that she does in management, writing job descriptions and everything else. But as far as like the technical, there's GitHub projects out there that there's what is it, pen test GPT, they'll actually use the results that you feed it from doing like network scans or even like website code, and you say, find the vulnerability. So I think as far as testing your networks and pen testing, it's going to be huge, if not already. So yeah, I use it. I don't think that there's been a day that I haven't used it for the past month or so, even if it's just writing policies, or sometimes if I'm feeling lazy, I'll tell it to write an email. Here's the kind of the gist of what I want to say, and it makes me sound extremely intelligent. I don't feel like writing an email.
Yeah. And Enrique, I would ask them too, like, hey, what are companies doing that are, who are your exemplars that are using it to gain efficiency? Because like I said, most of the time in a SOC, it's going to be based on your false positives, like things I don't need to look at that we already know are false positives. So don't send them across my analyst desk.
Yeah, parsing data is amazing with it. You can give it just a blob of text and say, organize this, and it does an amazing job.
It's going to be interesting, but yeah, so it seems to be helpful, but we'll find out here in a couple of weeks what we're achieving with it.
Yeah,
Going
dude,
back to using it in the daily, I used it yesterday. I'm Mexican, so I'm fluent in Spanish, but sometimes converting sassy and all these fancy words into Spanish for a quote that I had to deliver yesterday. I said, I'm going to take the shortcut here. I would
Good
just
for
put
you.
it in English and tell it convert to Spanish, and I will get it in Spanish, then just verify it. But yeah, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Enrique,
You guys really want to be scared, you should look. I read an article the other day that this company is starting to release robots that will be powered by ChatGPT and able to perform like manual labor. And that's almost here. It's not like something, we're thinking about it. That's like they have actual POCs.
I just got to throw in, has anybody doing that actually seen Terminator? I'm just out of curiosity. I mean,
Oh, believe me, I've talked about
They're
this
here to help.
extensively. This is what I'm most afraid of.
So
Like,
I would
the-
look at the matrix. I would look at the matrix and really look at that. If you guys, not to go veer off topic, but look at any of the prequels to the Matrix. It's all robots versus humans.
Yeah.
I'm much less concerned about, robots taking over the world and Terminators, and much more concerned about the simple fact that, these machine models can be very persuasive. And so replacing the sales cycle with just people with automation that don't really know the products, they can essentially persuade you to buy products you don't really need and make you do all kinds of things just from the art of persuasion. That I think is much a higher risk than robots or systems that the challenge is like, what do you really call AI? Any algorithm you can kind of consider an AI like model. And so it's depending on whether you stack different kinds of algorithms together or you have large language models that are tuned for different data sets and you stack them on top of each other. Each one of those things have completely different ways that data is being interpreted and flowing. Like the thing that we're doing and trying to be very cautious of is that these large language models really are not they're like correlation engines. So they really have no understanding of logic or reason or references or any of those pieces of information. It's just doing pattern recognition on a very large level. And
They're working on that. They have people that feed this data to this AI, but they want other AI to feed data to the AI.
right. So the thing that you'll see is quite interesting is Wolfram Alpha is starting to integrate ChatGPT directly with their computational language, Wolfram language. And that is much more compelling and extremely challenging or potentially dangerous for unintended consequences in the sense that, we need labor to look at these workflows, right? Just because you build automation doesn't mean you get to set it and forget it. You have to maintain that system over time. And so you need labor to maintain that system. So you need people that understand what the hell the workflow is actually doing and making sure it stays tuned and performing correctly. So like what we're seeing is like labor is not going to necessarily get reduced drastically. It's just going to be shifted in different ways where we still need labor for coverage, right? Like every role still needs a body in it to cover, a 24-hour cycle or a shift cycle. But we don't need nearly as much overhead for that. But we do need now more labor to maintain and create these automation cycles. And we also need to be really cautious about a lot of these things. These are consumer facing right now, not necessarily business facing. So like ChatGPT, for example, if you're using the free version, your data is in their models now. So I highly recommend that if you're going to play around with any of this, that you pay for ChatGPT and use it only after you paid for it, including for your clients. So I would recommend that you engage with your clients and tell them if they want to play around with this, pay for one account and they can all play in that same bucket. But that helps protect their data because by paying for it, the data stays in your system or your instance and is using an API to the learning model. And so it's sending just tokenized information, not the actual raw data that stays within you.
Have you played with the feature that allows it to actually go out to websites and just websites?
Yeah.
That's fun.
It's fun, but it's also, it's like, you really have to think through like, how is this going to be useful in which ways, right? You still need a lot of people that are essentially like QCing the information and turning it into a business objective, right? Like this is still a lot of like, these are kind of cool and novel things, but it's going to take some time to figure out how we're going to integrate it into our business processes.
So let me just jump in back for Liran here. So we talked about, Liran, how you might use it. Any other suggestions from folks where you'd like to see it help you, where you might have to pick up the phone or things that are repetitive within SaaS Alerts or however SaaS Alerts could use it for yourself? Any comments or thoughts?
Like generating custom language about an end user so that it's more of a personalized message. Like say we got an alert and we're going to send this alert on to a client. Having it be contextualized in that, knowing who that person is, knowing us as a business and stitching those all together would be of benefit. But I think from like how are you supposed to use this from a technical perspective? I think would be a little challenging in the sense of you would have to kind of have it look at, say, Microsoft's documentation for these types of alerts and give you those kind of recommendations of how you would pull that off based on these alerts. And that's coming with Microsoft is introducing their Chat GPT for the security stack on Microsoft side. And that integrating with that version of Microsoft's product rather than Chat GPT directly would probably be more beneficial because it has more contextual understanding to the Microsoft graph and can pin all that information directly with inside the platform. And since we're the strongest in this application with Office 365, I can see on that being the biggest benefit immediately.
Got it.
So one of the things that you mentioned, Ryan, is like, let's say Ryan does something sketchy and you want to send the customer a message. So would you want us to like put together that story for you and package it up and give it to you and say, here, take this and put this in front of your client in order to ask them, was this you? This doesn't look right to us. Like, help me understand kind of where you're going with that.
Yeah, like specifically around like that SMS messaging, right? In the sense that it would be very beneficial for you to essentially know like the username, the email address, like enough information to make it not as technical, but more personal. So that when you're talking with that, say, approver security contact, you're not just sending them like an email address or a number or a ticket number or code. Enough of an understanding that like when they see that text message, they know who you're talking about, like because they know people in their business by their first and last name, for example. And so like crafting that kind of experience would be beneficial for them so that
Yeah.
they don't have to be as technical.
So Ryan, this is great stuff. This is exactly what I think we were hoping for in this conversation. Obviously, we've thought of lots of things on our own that we want to do with AI in the back end of the product, but you've brought something up that I haven't heard anyone on our team consider, including myself, which is, the descriptions that we provide that come with a recommendation, we could be providing to the frontline tech. Here's a recommended message, to send your customer and lay it out in plain English, or, would you like us to turn this into a phone call script for you? We could take steps using the large language learning models to make it easier for the technical team to communicate with the customer directly from our efforts on SaaS Alerts. It's a really interesting idea.
Chip, and to take that just a step further, maybe if you go down that path, there's piece in the UI that's like, and what persona Ryan, what's the name of your company? Sorry, dude.
Pacific Office Automation.
Yeah. Hey, how does Pacific Office Automation's persona like to respond in its tier
Exactly.
one? We're this empathetic. Give me an example of like how you respond and your tonality, Ryan, when and then so Chip, then it's adopting Pacific Office persona.
Right. It's a better version of white labeling, right? Instead of just being our logo and our name, it can be crafted in the same kind of marketing and sales language we use, or our packages or our products to go along with that. So that, because, there's multiple things that SaaS Alerts is essentially doing, but we need other things in order to say, get MFA, right? So it's like if you have a P1 license versus a P2, them being able to know that like some of this stuff is behind a license paywall, right? If you wanted to fix some of these things. And so there's a whole part of branding around that would make it a better experience for a customer to know what's going on.
So if we could craft that messaging that you talked about and just give you human customer facing readable text that you could then present to your customer, would you then want to email them directly, copy and paste, send them an SMS? Like, what would you do with that if I could just give you that customer?
The two use cases I can think of right away is like sending those SMS messages directly. So like if it's, short and concise and to the point of like, what are we trying to inform the end user about this alert, this respond rule, and have it be contextualized to that person rather than just a phone number. right? And so that would be a benefit. And then the secondary part would be through like the reporting and email aspect of personalizing that white label of those reports. And way we typically do that is we send those reports to our technical account managers and then send that across to a customer, because it helps maintain the quality of the relationship where they see that that's the person providing the value to them, not necessarily the tool. So it can kind of engage in the conversation, and then we can go through essentially a sales cycle or remediation through that.
Quick, if I could just comment real quick, Ryan, and we get some
Yeah.
hands. But would you also want always a ticket just for documentation's sake? Let's just say,
Yes,
worst case, we get into a forensic situation.
correct.
Hey, it's all here, guys. It's documented. It's blah, 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 blah.
Right. So like what we do is we send those things to our ticketing system. It gets assigned to that account manager, and they're communicating through the ticketing platform, but via email back and forth. So we have this chain of custody and evidence of the whole conversation.
But I think you could speed things up to that ticket where it's like, hey, here's the persona language right in here. Would you want to, hit send, and off
Right.
you go onto the
Yeah.
thing.
Exactly. That's where I was headed, Andrew. If we gave
Yeah.
you, when that ticket comes in, it contains, the text for your tech to review that we would recommend to send to the customer in a very personable manner, and give you just a link to hit that's pre-authorized API call that just says, go ahead, send it. It's
Right.
gone.
So like having, 3 different choices would be good. Like going more than that can be too complicated, like short and concise, technical or business, right? Like, do we want formal business language where we taking this concept and just abstracting it to what does it mean to the business? Or is this just a summary of like very quick, like in a text message? Or is this overly technical? Is this going to be designed to go to a technical resource, say a SOC or a security responder? Those are the 3 things that come to mind immediately that, personality wise would be beneficial. Have each one of those things could have the versions of what does it mean for me as an MSP, right? Like, are there certain words or languages or cadences around grammar and language that we as a business have adopted? And that would be across all 3 of those kind of profiles, I would say.
It's really good stuff.
So before we move off this topic, Andrew, I just want to let everyone know that this entire presentation, Ryan was actually an avatar that was generated just for this.
Yeah, it'd be nice. If I could clone myself, I could do a whole bunch of more work, but yeah.
Hey, Andy has a question.
Hey, thanks for, I'm late to this and I apologize, but what I hear you raising is an alerting mechanism that would potentially be directed to our customer. And I listened to JB Burrows and Jim talk about automation workflows, and I'm going to suggest you take this a step higher. And instead of having it go directly to me or to a customer, allow me to send this to something like a Roost or an app, my own application, where I'm able to customize the communication to the customer based on an overall perception. Now I'm able to take into account items outside of just SaaS Alerts. I can take a look at some of the automations that come out of SaaS Alerts. It might be, the fact that, hey, this is happening outside of the device, and I'm able then to customize and automate workflows that allow me to ping in multiple areas and communicate that customization language independent of whatever scripting you guys come up with. Does that make sense? In other words, it's just give me that ability to flow this in and out of SMS or to ticketing or to a phone call or whatever other pieces might be there. Am I misunderstanding where you were with this?
No,
No.
I think that makes sense. I'm just trying to think about how this data would get moved around.
Well, so I'm asking for the ability for me to begin to use something like a Roost with this, and then I could use plugins or Zapier or webhooks to begin to communicate. Ultimately, where I'm going with this is an endpoint application that gives me the ability to visually give a status for cloud, desktop, and all that to the end user, and I could easily change that to, hey, you've gone to yellow because we've gotten some sort of alert you need to pay attention, or it might go flashing red, hey, we're trying to get a hold of you. And it could go to their cell phone. It's just a way to give a heartbeat, or like, how's your gas tank, right? I'm just trying to think of delivery and awareness at that level. I don't know if that's too much to ask, but I thought I'd put it out there.
This is an open forum, Andy. You can put anything out there.
So another question I want to throw out there is, we've often talked about incident reports and normalizing those and what should those look like. So would it be helpful to have an automatically generated incident report that you could then turn around and deliver it to whoever you need to deliver it to?
I think like that would definitely be valuable. It's the question is there enough information inside the system directly to deal with the totality of the incident? Right now, you can really only see, say like a business email compromise and stuff with inside that platform. If they move outside of it, then you potentially are not able to provide the whole report. And so you could kind of summarize your piece of it, which would be very helpful to kind of put it into the overall response plan. That would be of great value in the sense of if you could quickly summarize like, hey, we saw a breach here. They got into this email account, they moved over here, they created these 5 rules, and you summarize like, this has affected these 5 people. These are the actions taken. This is the next steps. Like standardizing that would be of great benefit.
Yeah, basically, Liran, I think you're talking about hey, this is the kill chain we've seen so far. They compromised, unauthorized access, geolocation unknown. Then they created forwarding rules. As Ryan said, they moved laterally across here to this account. They spearphished this person. They did this, and it's all summarized. Is that?
Yeah, and it'd be a great starting point, right? If at the end of this entire thing, $15,000 were transferred from one bank account to another, you would have the starting point technically to identify where it initially occurred, everything you just said, Andrew, and then you could take and add on to that the stuff that happened, say in the bank or wherever it occurred outside of the application.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I also think it'd be one step further for you guys to, if you did that, Jim, to go over to Acrisure and say, by the way, how cool would this be for you guys?
100%. I mean, the cyber insurance implications here are awesome.
Yeah.
So any other ideas? Anybody else?
I was going to say, along with what Ryan was saying, like a text message or something, like have it so that the customer could respond to that message. Like ask, what steps should I take, or what was taken, and something would respond to them in a human-like tone.
So that is an interesting point, Ben, but it has us cross a certain line, which we haven't crossed before. And that line is interacting with your customers on your behalf. Sounds like you're comfortable with that. I don't know if anybody else is.
I guess it would just depend. I guess if they weren't comfortable, like, could you set barriers? Could you set restrictions? Is it an all or nothing thing?
Yep. All right. Well, I think we've covered this topic pretty nicely. We have a lot of good inputs, a lot of good insights, and it'll give us quite a bit to think about as we start thinking about how we're going to leverage all these new technologies into giving you a better product.
Really good stuff. Great. Thanks for the contributions, folks. That was great. Okay, let me come back here. So Jim, got some announcements here.
Yes. So for those that didn't hear, SaaS Alerts won the MSP Today Product of the Year Award. We announced it a couple days ago, and I just want to thank everyone on this call. Obviously there's a lot of hard work from those team members here at SaaS Alerts that goes in to achieving an award like this, and we're proud of the distinction and the recognition, but it doesn't mean anything without you folks, our community, especially the folks on this call, right? You guys have been early adopters, have helped us, focus on what's really important to the community, which obviously has generated a product that a lot of people really like. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you all for helping us achieve this award.
Congrats, Jim. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Okay, Jim, so we did a webinar, one of 3, the other day. I think it was Tuesday.
Mhm.
Time's flying this week. It was with you, John Barros, Charlie Tomeo, and
And you.
me. And wanted to know, did anybody sit in on that? Michelle, maybe you can see show of hands. I can't see anymore now that I'm sharing my screen, or Jim, you can, but wanted to just see if there was anything. Andy, I saw you. Thanks for sitting in. Anybody have any takeaways, good, bad, and different, that they want to share coming out of that webinar?
I can share. I watched it on YouTube. I missed the presentation with a conflict, but I really got that there's a change. I want to call it almost a systemic change in how businesses are going to be acquiring customers going forward. The strategies that have worked in the past are evolving, and that we need to be focused on human-to-human connections. And in a down economy, people are going to be looking for people they can trust, and referrals. There's just a lot there. Developing and putting yourself out there is what I was getting. In fact, Google, there was just an article that went out about how there's a whole new flywheel for creating top of funnel. So those were things that came out, and I just saw that being reinforcing. Thanks.
Andy, that's interesting. Any chance you can share that URL on the top of funnel stuff?
Oh, absolutely, I can. I'll forward it to you. I'll put it in the chat in just a second right now.
Yeah, I mean, Jim, anything for you before I go to the next slide that you wanted to highlight in terms of the event?
Not necessarily. I think the conversation was a good one, and I think it's really important to have these conversations, even if you didn't find necessarily the content that constructive for you right now. The fact that we're having that conversation and these conversations like we're having today, I think really are important for all of us to sort out all the changes that are going on right now in the marketplace and how we can collectively adapt to them. So there might not be action items specific to some of the things that we're talking about for all of you, but the fact that we're talking about it ultimately, I think, can definitely ignite ideas that could generate action. So overall, I think we just need to be having these conversations.
Yeah, I think you summed it up well, Jim. And I think so that when I look at this slide, I'm going to come back to commercial insights and having conversations with your customers, right? Even if you're sitting there going, I'm not ready for this, or I don't want to look at this, or whatever it is, I'm going to put blinders on. Do your customers have salespeople? Do you, again, I'd ask you, do you have sales? If it's an owner-led sales team, I get it, but do you have salespeople? Because this is a very staggering statistic. I mean, when you look at this and what AI can do, right? Because if you have a team of 5 people that are doing telemarketing and business development, or again, think about the value you can create in your client, right? Because again, if you're not having this conversation with your client, like just quick show of hands, do you have any customers that have sales teams? Just, I can't see, but can you look for me, Jim? Does anybody have customers with sales teams?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm assuming everybody does.
Right. So my question is, if you're not having this conversation, do you think somebody else is? If I'm an MSP talking to a prospect, certainly one of the top insights I'm going to be talking to them, commercial insights, I'm going to be talking to them about, even if this isn't the end result of what I sell to them. Do you know the trends and how it's going to impact your business when it comes to artificial intelligence and your sales team? Did you know 72% of what your team is doing can be replaced by AI. That's a pretty compelling commercial insight. Fair, Jim?
Definitely fair.
Like, again, don't humor me. Let's just say you got a call from me today. I'm work for John Barrow Sales, and you're thinking of your sales overhead as SaaS Alerts. If I said that to you, do I have your attention at least?
I got a question. I guess one of the things that can be, people have different definitions of what sales is. Some people believe marketing is part of sales. Some like when you look at this, I don't necessarily say that is not about selling. This is the data side of selling, the administrative side of selling. So like I get what you're trying to articulate in the sense that a lot of this, the data massaging, the analytics has an effect on AI here, and that's a lot. Whereas the stuff that you're quoting as the 28% selling here is really interactions, direct interactions with a customer, right? And that we still kind of have a preference to human interactions, but there's not necessarily a reason to not communicate that data directly with a customer through an open language model, for example. Like if you're delivering results of those things on the non-selling side to a prospect, you're still engaged in the sale process. Like I see all this as part of the sales cycle.
We're not disagreeing with you, Ryan. All we're saying is I spent 20 years in sales. I don't say that egotistically. I'm saying that 72%, if I was still in hardcore sales, I would adopt AI in 2 seconds to do that for me. I don't want to.
I get that part.
Right, because you get to spend more time talking to people, right? You essentially just put your entire sales cycle on steroids, right? Because now instead of talking to 20 people a week, you can talk to, probably 100 people a week at that point. Because, for instance, like all the research that you're doing for prospects that takes up 9.3% of the time, you just basically offload it to AI.
Yeah, it's just it's a slight difference if you're doing transactional selling versus relationship selling, right? Like
No,
it's still,
I don't think that is.
well, I think it is because people, me as an individual, I can only maintain about 100 friendships, right? Like me actually knowing these people and actually them being engaged in knowing me still takes time and effort. I have to follow up and engage. So like a salesperson that is doing relationship sales is going to need to engage with that customer to maintain that relationship, which is that side.
These are prospects that you're trying to find compelling information about to engage with them, right? So you're going to leverage AI to essentially scrape the internet on everything I need to know about Andrew Morgan. Instead of taking me hours to do that, it's going to take AI minutes to do it.
Yes and no, in the sense of all the things AI can really only see is the public persona of these customers or prospects, not their private lives or their business lives. And so it takes a bit of persuasion to knock down these prospects' walls to give them to trust you enough to engage in that kind of a conversation.
We're agreeing.
Okay.
We're going to be more at bats at that because you can't do that. What you just said, Ryan, 100% agree with you. I can't do that if I'm sitting there prioritizing my opportunities, if I'm trying to figure out a quote. I can't do the very thing that the most important thing you just said, which I want to do more of. That is the whole point. 100% agree with. Couldn't agree
So
with you.
like the stumbling blocks I see though on the non-selling side is less to do with AI and more to do with the plurality of tools that we use in the sales environment and them not being integrated, right? Like these things all have automations built into each one of these things that are available products on the market right now. It's just whether they fully align with your entire solution set. Like it's quite easy to generate quotes automatically. It's quite easy to do planning and preparation if you have access to a customer's environment, right? And so you have data analytics to rely upon. So like I've already seen, I guess what I'm trying to articulate is I've already seen quite a bit of efficiency gains just from, the sassy version of sales now of there's so much data available to us and there's enough automation workflows that's just algorithmic, that doesn't require large language models, that I've already seen such a huge efficiency gain in this area in the last 5 to 10 years, that like the squeeze, I'm not as worried about the squeeze of AI when it comes to that side of the fence.
The problem with what you're saying though is, yes, HubSpot can do what you're saying. Let's just choose a model, HubSpot. But there's no value in the responses. What AI can do, what Jim's trying to say is, it can then go, Ryan Thompson's interested in these things. My response to Ryan Thompson, my high ground opener, Ryan Thompson, is he's interested in these things. HubSpot, yes, can do everything you just said, except do something that means something to you. This is where AI can.
Right, but like, where's AI getting that contextual understanding of that prospect? Right, like, are they getting it from their Facebook profile? Well, this is just their public persona, right? And so it's like there's a lot of data privacy around that information that can be challenging for this automation process.
Again, we can go back and forth. Typically, business owners write blogs. They are interested in things, and those are public. A lot of that is public. What's their customer facing website? What are they interested? What are their causes?
Where'd you go to college? Like,
yeah. So, Andy, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I'm just expressing that, Ryan, I'm sorry, not doing crosstalk. I'm going to say that there's many aspects to this. One is the personal relationship. The second is a client account manager role, which allows us to scale. And third would be, I'm very interested in understanding how prompting, writing the prompts, prompt engineering, however you want to call it, is the key to having this be effective. And is there any recommendations that Jim or JB or Andrew can provide as to how we could craft these prompts and build this process, leveraging AI? Thank you. And building on it. So thank you. So this is what I'm getting at is I can begin to write to query Facebook or LinkedIn, or and then I can give this to an account manager, and they can go through and ask the questions and build up the need and make them aware of it.
This is with just open source Bard. Think about something that actually has actual relevant data on. I did this for you, Andy, specifically because I know you're in the healthcare area.
Yeah.
But now, as a VCIO, account manager, whatever, now I can go in. Well, I really didn't understand what EHR means to my customer. What are the trends in EHR? How's it changing? What are the laws coming up? Et cetera, that I now can engage in meaningful conversations with my customers versus, hey, it's Andrew with XYZ MSP and we do blah, blah, blah better than XYZ, right? I'm being a little sarcastic, but
with you.
This is the difference, right? About, hey, this is a trend we're seeing in the healthcare industry that's impacting blah, 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 blah. Are you guys aware of this?
Yep. And one of the challenges for me is I tend to get too detailed, and I need to communicate just increased productivity, fear, and the benefits. So doing this at a higher level and then being able to take them, and that's where I guess where I personally struggle. So we'll work through that.
Yeah, sure. Again, awesome debate, Ryan. Again, love your points. I just want, what I want to just typify an exclamation point is I'm in agreement. We need to know our customers better. And as somebody that's spent their life in sales, so much of my time is consumed by not doing that to hit my quota.
Yeah. It's top of the hour. Unfortunately, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Great seeing everybody. Thanks
Awesome.
all.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
In the same boat. Gotta go, guys.
Bye, guys.